Hello, everyone. Welcome to our public service loan forgiveness for contractors office hours. I'm Heather Kessinger. I'm the senior policy analyst here with Oregon Public Defense Commission. And I have worked on this project with Eric. And so today we're here to kind of, walk you through the process, tell you a bit about the program, and then answer any questions that anyone may have regarding this new certification process that we've introduced with the agency.
What? I think there's another one right over there.
And as people come in, I will ask, I am getting a bit of feedback, so if you're able to mute yourself, then that will help with the feedback, and then I could go ahead and share our PowerPoint. Bear with me here. Share my screen. And can everyone see my screen okay? I sure hope so. Get this thing started. There we go. All right. Well, I just introduced myself, and like I said, I worked with Eric on this policy and process. So I'll go ahead and to the next slide. There we go. All right. So the public service loan forgiveness for contractors. I'm sorry, excuse me. Okay. So most recently, the PSLF program is intended to encourage individuals to enter and continue into full-time public service employment by forgiving the remaining balance of their direct loans after they satisfy the public service and loan payment requirements. As of July 10th, 2023, the original policy was amended to expand the definition of employee for PSLF program purposes to include an individual who works as a contracted employee for a qualifying employer in a position or providing services which, under applicable state law, cannot be filled or provided by a direct employee of the qualifying employer. Contractors that have provided trial level public defense services fall within the expanded definition of employee. So due to those updates, we were able to, create this certification. So let's go into a bit of our policy. The PSLF for contractors policy. So we were able to establish criteria for the agency's certification for contractors that have contracted with Oregon Public Defense Commission that provide representation to those entitled to public defense services to be eligible for the PSLF. Our policy applies for all requests for PSLF for contractors that have contracted with OPDC. And our policy went into effect as of October 1st, 2024 was when it was approved. So eligibility criteria. So under the new PSLF rules, individuals may now be eligible for student loan forgiveness under PSLF, even though they are not W-2 employees, but instead they're contractors working for qualifying organizations. Attorneys in consortia and other private bar attorneys may be eligible for PSLF as well. And any public defense contractor is eligible if they have been engaged in public defense work full-time for 10 years, which is defined by PSLF as working during the period of being certified. And on the next slide, I have the definition of the full-time employment. So I did break down the definition into bullet points on this slide so it would be easier to read and reference. So full-time employment for PSLF purposes is working 30 or more hours per week on average for the employment period on the form, regardless of whether the employee considers that full-time for other purposes. Working less than 30 hours per week on average is considered part-time, which would not be eligible. When determining if a borrower is full-time, an employer must include all hours, which would include their vacation, their leave time, or any leave taken under the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993. When including these hours, they do not include the volunteer hours. So you do not want to include time spent performing volunteer services. So, so if you are wanting to be able to submit for a contractor certification request with our agency, we request that these documents be submitted. So to submit a request for contractor certification, the following required documents are to be submitted by eFax to OPDC. So what we are going to need is a completed and signed public service loan forgiveness and temporary expanded PCLF certification and application. And in addition, we are going to need our OPDC Public Service Loan Forgiveness Certification for Contractors form. It's quite the mouthful, but it's a long title. Completed by your contractor administrator or the applicant's employer, establishing the time period that the applicant provided public defense services pursuant to the contract and attesting that the service provided by the applicant meets the PCLF definition of full-time. And the OPDC Public Service Loan Forgiveness Certification for Contractors form must be signed by the contract administrator or the applicant's employer and by the applicant yourself. And the applicant would be, all of you. So let's go to the next slide. And to complete the public loan services certification for contractors, the following will need to be completed. So when you complete this form, this is actually our agency form that we created. You want to enter your contractor, your personal information in the contractor section. You want to complete your employment period section by entering the begin and end dates for your employment or certification. The contract administrator and/or employer certifies to OPDC that the information contained in the contractor's application is accurate, and the contract administrator and/or employer certifies that the contractor engaged in public defense work full-time for the time period provided within that employment period box. And then at the bottom of the form is where the applicant and the contractors complete, and then they sign to attest that the work was completed. What I do want to cover is within the PSL application from the federal government, they do require that there is that they provide their social securities and date of birth. On our document, we do the same as well because we need to be able to confirm, these documents are going to be submitted to the federal government. They want to be able to tie the documents together. So due to that, there's personally identifiable, there's PII information. Sorry, I recently got braces, so bear with me while I try to speak through this. So the PSL application contains personally identifiable PII. To protect the contractor certification request must be submitted securely. So due to this and the way our agency is set up, the forms must be submitted through eFax. So the contractor must submit their request for their contractor certification through our OPDC eFax. The eFax is what we are going to be using to exchange these documents between the contractor and our team. And then also in this slide, I provided our eFax policy number. And I do just want to make sure, we really address that these need to be eFaxed in, because we're really trying to make sure that we secure your information, that your information is secure. So there's no risk of, say, like a data breach or anything like that. We just really want to make sure that we are securing your date of birth, your name, and your social security number. Once we receive the application, so that eFax will come through, will come into our policy email. And once we receive it, then we upload your application so it could go into review. When we receive that, we then are going to send out a confirmation to you in email just to confirm that, hey, we have it received, it's in process, and we are reviewing it. Within that confirmation, we do let you know that all submitted requests are subject for review, and they will be reviewed within 30 days of receipt. You do want to continue to kind of watch for emails because If we need to communicate with you, we're going to send an email to let you know if there's anything that we need. So this will then go into an eligibility review, and OPDC will certify the PSLF application. And once the following requirements are met, we review and verify the information provided by the contractor in section 4 of the PSLF application. We verify the periods of time the contractor was providing public defense services, and we confirm the contractor meets the full-time eligibility criteria to qualify for the PCLF program. Verify the OPDC public service loan forgiveness certification for contracts form is complete. If in that review process, we come across it's an incomplete certification request, we will request this will be through emails. Through our policy email, we'll do a request for either documents or information. So if we're missing any type of information that we need to be able to certify, we're going to reach out to you and request. And this will come in a form of 2 requests. So we will send what we call like a document request or a request for information, and it will go through email, and you will have 14 days to submit this requested information. We do track, and if we have not received the information within the 14 days, we're going to do another reach out because we're trying to really work with you and help you out. So we'll send up the follow-up request for this information. If we don't receive the information within that second doc request or information for request for information, we're going to have to withdraw the application. And it's just because we can't sit here and just and hold it. But at any time, so we'll send out a notice of withdrawal, but at any time you could resubmit. So if you don't get the information to us within that 30-day window after the 2 doc requests, we do have to take the application out of the queue so we could continue to process other applications that we may have. At any time, you could easily just resubmit. So there's and so then if you are approved, if it's reviewed and it is verified that you are eligible for OPDC to certify your contractors form in your application, OPDC will complete section 5A of your PSLF application. And then we will also send you an approval letter saying, hey, yes, we reviewed and we were able to certify. And then we will e-fax it back to you. We have had a couple, we have certified actually 3. And before we send out the e-fax, we've done a follow-up email just to, confirm your e-fax number, let you know it's on the way. So we're trying to be very communicative and let you know where the status is. And before we send something, we just want to kind of give a heads up and let you know. Now, if we do certify, this isn't a guarantee, it's not a guarantee. So we are certifying that the work was complete, but it's up to the federal government for them to be able to forgive the loan. So we're attesting the work is done, we're certifying, so then you can send that off to your PSLF, federal government, and it's up to their analyst and their team to make that determination for loan forgiveness. So we just do want to make sure that we do let you know, but we're trying to be able to assist you the best we can with attesting to the work being complete. Withdrawn certification request. A certification request, there's 2 ways if the application is going to be withdrawn. We have, as I just previously discussed, if we do not receive the requested information, we've requested the documents, we will do a notice of withdrawal. And at any time, if you choose to withdraw your request to be certified, you'll want to email our policy email address, which is listed here, and then we could go ahead and withdraw your request, and then we'll send you a notice of withdrawal form as well, so that that we've taken you kind of out of the queue and then you move on. Now, if we do review and we're unable to verify the eligibility, then we'll have to send a notice of denial. So if it is determined that the contractor does not meet the eligibility requirement for OPDC to certify, then OPDC will deny the request for certification. What we will do is we will send you a notice of denial and through our policy email. Now, the notice of denial, like if you feel that we're inaccurate, you are able to file an appeal, and that denial notice will give you instructions to how to submit a request for an appeal. And then what it will do is if you request the appeal, then we'll put you in for a second review, and then maybe we'll ask for additional documentation to be able to verify the eligibility. So if you are denied, we do have an appeals process built in. We also will have quality assurance due to the attestations, certifications. We do have to build in a QA review process. So OPDC is directed to adopt policies for public defense providers that ensure compensation, resources, and caseloads are in accordance with national and regional best practices to promote policies for public defense provider compensation and resources. OPDC will review the OPDC attestation forms signed by the contract administrators and the public defender's employer to verify the public defender completed full-time work for 10 years. If OPDC concludes an application is untruthful, the OPDC will notify PCLF and any other agency with regulatory authority over the person's licensure and profession. So we have been gathering frequently asked questions. We've had some people who've contacted us by email through our policy email. And since we know it's new, we're trying to gather as many of these questions as we can. And then we're going to also, once we have some FAQs, we will be posting these to the website. So you could, that way you have a reference for additional questions. A few of the questions we have received, this one is, I am an investigator. Will OPDC certify my PSLF application? So currently we believe the answer is yes. New program, we're learning. OPDC will certify the PSLF application if we are able to verify that the investigator meets the definition of full-time as outlined in our policy. It is up to the federal government to determine if you will qualify for the federal student loan forgiveness. Next question that we've received is the PSLF certification policy retroactive? And yes, the policy is retroactive, and we will verify applicants if they meet the federal definition of full-time, both in the past and prospectively. Additional question. I have worked for 2 different contract administrators. Do I need to complete do I need to complete a 2? Okay, well, let me just, do you need to complete more than one contract administration form? So yes, if you have worked for, say, multiple contract administrators, you're going to want to fill out one of our forms for each administrator that you've worked for, and each one will have to sign, and then you'll want to submit each one of those. And so yes, you will need to do multiple forms if needed. I have an additional question. I've completed work hours for public defense through other agencies and or boards. Is OPDC able to certify those hours? Unfortunately, we cannot. OPDC can only certify hours that are completed through contracts with OPDC. So you will need to contact the other agencies and or boards to request if they're able to certify those employment hours that you may have worked with them. And the firm that I previously worked with no longer exists. Who should I have complete and sign my OPDC PSLF certification for contractors form? So OPDC is only able to certify full-time hours from the attested hours from the contract administrator and or employer. If the contract administrator and or employer is unable to complete the OPDC PSLF certification for contractors form due to the firm that is no longer in business, or say if they are deceased, then you will need to complete section 5B of the public service loan forgiveness application. And so section 5B, you would have to follow the requirements that the federal government has, their guidelines for how to complete it. But we're only able to certify the section 5A if we are able to receive the form to verify those contract hours. So resources. So we have tried to put as much information on our website as we can. So if you go to our website and you go under policies and procedures, there is a tag there for PSLF. And within there, we provided a copy of the policy. We've written out instructions for a submission process for how you could submit your request to be certified. And we also have a copy of our form. It's a fillable form that you could fill out and have signed and all of it. And then also we have our secure fax number. Like I said, with the PII, you must make sure that you e-fax it. Please do not email your request to us. It has been, the email is not secure. We do not have a secure email, so it must be e-faxed for your data to be protected. And additional resources for any guidance that you're going to need for the federal document. You're going to want to make sure you visit the federal website, and then the application for public student loan forgiveness is also on the federal site as well. So I did provide these links so to make it easy on yourselves to be able to use those resources. And then we're going to be able to answer some questions here shortly, but also too, if you do come across, say you're working on your application or you have a question that comes down the road, please email all your questions to our policy email address. Like I said earlier, we're trying to gather as many of these questions so we could create FAQs for all of you, and so that we can have that on our website as a resource to use when reviewing or trying to figure out how to submit applications or the random questions that you may have, like the investigator one, right? So I guess I'm just going to open the door for questions.
Heather,
I can help with
this is
yes.
Kim. We have a couple questions from the
Fantastic.
chat. And so we answered the e-fax, right? So
Okay.
that I know that may be new for some of our providers. And you can use e-fax through your email. So they don't have to physically have a fax machine in their office, or they don't have to go to like a Kinko's or FedEx or any place to actually fax us the documents. They can do it directly through their email, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that is in our process document that's on our website. Okay.
Yes. So in the submission process, there are instructions for e-fax and how to submit through e-fax.
Right. We answered the question already, is it retroactive? Because that was the question that we had received. So that one's been answered. The other question that's been in the chat is, I'm a psychologist who provides regular services for OPDS, and I'm wondering if vendors who perform services for OPDS like myself may qualify.
Yeah, I can take that, Kim. And this is actually a good opportunity to kind of explain the policy as a whole a little bit. So, the policy change announced by the federal government last summer allowed contractors rather than employees. And in terms of public student loan forgiveness, our agency, OPDC, we are a qualified employer for this policy. And we've only been able to in the past to certify our own employees. And so with this change that we can certify for contractors, at least from our perspective, we can certify whether contractors of our agency meet the definition of full-time, and that would include, I think, all contractors, psychologists, investigators. Now, we cannot guarantee how the federal government is going to respond to this. When we started getting information about this change, it was really earlier this year. We didn't start seeing like some kind of national trainings or guidance until the spring. The specific language, if you're interested, it's from the commission materials in August and September. But what it says is if you work as a contracted employee for a qualifying employer, and we're a qualified employer, and you are in a position or providing services which, under applicable state law, cannot be filled or provided by a direct employer of the qualified employer, well, that's most of our contractors. We didn't have folks like this on staff doing this public service work. So I think we feel comfortable that we can make that certification. The question for us really came out, and where we got legal advice was, in the context of our traditional public defense contracts, and those are the folks who work now a MAC contract, formerly an FTE. But we don't know how many hours they're working. That's key because the definition of full-time is an average of 30 hours per week. And so that's where we got the advice of, look, if we know they're working a legitimate contract, we know that they're certifying that they're full-time and they have a second person, the administrator also certifying that they're full-time, then we have the documentation we need where we can make that certification. Honestly, we weren't even thinking in terms of hourly providers. Like, so there's a lot of you out there, and we're going to need to update our policy that bill us directly your time. So like this, as we've demonstrated, this was really aimed at people for which we don't have a record of what their time is. If you've been billing the agency going backwards, we can just pull that information from our accounts payable department. I don't know if that helps answer your question, but yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing we do want to emphasize is when you look at the example of this policy change in the federal regulation, it's still hard for us to know how it's going to be applied by the federal government, but we feel as though at least we can aid in making those certifications.
Eric, can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yeah.
I'm a psychologist. Also, I've done work for OPDC for 16 years. I want to know, I'm the administrator. I'm in private practice. I'm the administrator and the employee. So how does that work?
Well, though so Dr. McNeil, in my experience in working with you, attorneys seek your services through pre-authorization requests, get hours, and then you bill off those hours. And so this policy that was just articulated by Heather was really aimed at that difficult thing we were trying to figure out is what do we do for people we have no time information on? You know, for folks who are billing the agency directly for their work, you know, we still need to work this out. We'll probably be reaching out to folks in the community on how to document this, but if we have a record that you're working an average of 30 hours per week per year, I don't think we would need some additional certification by an administrator because we have a paper trail meets the definition for us to determine if someone meets the definition of full-time.
Sure. So I have talked to quite a few colleagues about this very thing, the psychologists, some attorneys, some investigators who consistently bill 20, 25 hours a week, not necessarily the 30, but there are hours that we work that are not billable hours, that if we were actual full-time employees at an organization would be just sort of part of our job description, whether that's CEs or, you know, case management, filing, all billing, like the time I spend billing, I can't bill for that time. So how do we, you know, if I say consistently I bill around 22, 24 hours a week, and I can show that because of the, you know, amount OPDC pays me, how do I verify that extra 5, 6, 7 hours a week? I mean, would you like us to put that in some sort of Excel spreadsheet or a letter attesting to that? Or, I mean, I know you're still working out the details, so, but these are some of the things I'm thinking of as I'm trying to maybe pursue this option. And also, how much vacation time can we say? Because if I say, you know, consistently I take 4 weeks of vacation, that means my hourly, you know, the amount of hours I've worked during the 11 months of the year is different than if I say I take 3 months a year of vacation, and then all of a sudden that hourly amount goes up, you know, for the other 9 months of the year. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure I do it right the first time, I guess.
Yeah, I think I mean, as we put the policy up on the website and started getting questions, I know we're looking forward to having these office hours because there's just more work that's going to need to be done to figure out like what we were really looking at first, which is these attorneys because the lawyers at nonprofits have always been eligible, but this was really aimed at those in consortia and law firms and those types of contracts. So I guess, Dr. McNeil, I don't think we have an answer right now, and we need to get folks, I think, from all the practice groups and start talking about what their workloads are like and how we can consider updating these policies.
Well, if you need a volunteer to be on a, please email me.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the same follow-up as Dr. McNeil. So I have an S corp, and so I have my own W-2s that say that I have 40 hours a week in my salary. Would that be something that would be helpful to include in my application materials?
Probably, although I think what we're going to need to be specifically looking at is how, I mean, the lens we're going to be looking at is how can we certify that there is a file that we can point to that says we can justify that they meet this federal definition. And so anything that, that is aimed at, those kind of fact establishments are things that we probably want to consider.
Should we hold off on submitting the application until you've met and considered these things, or should we submit it now and see how it goes?
Well, I think right now, if you know that you bill an average of more than 30 hours a week to the agency, we can just work on processing that. And but if you're not in that position, that's where we're going to have to do additional work. And we won't be able to process it until we have a policy that's been vetted on this issue. So I think I wouldn't recommend sending it in quite yet.
Well, I have a recommendation. So because this is new and we have built into process, a review process. We have built in document request or request for information. So, I mean, there's no guarantee if it's going to be approved or denied, but if you're kind of maybe in this little, I'm going to say a gray area, and we're trying to determine if this will be eligible, I would say go ahead and submit so that way we can review these different circumstances. And then we can compare it to, say, the federal guidelines. Will this work for our agency? And like I said, there's no guarantee if we're going to be able to approve it or not, but we need to be able to we need to have the opportunity to review it and analyze it and see if that is something that could potentially qualify. So I recommend, I mean, if you gather your information, submit through eFax, and we can go through a review process. Like I said, there's no guarantee if we could approve it or not, but at least we could analyze it. So sorry, I didn't mean to kind of jump in there, Eric, but
no, I think thank you. I appreciate that. Because until we started doing this, we didn't know all the things we didn't know, which is similar to the chat just posted by Michael Lowry, which was something we learned as well.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is we're learning a lot from your questions that you guys are providing through the email, even with the questions that you're bringing within this setting right here. And so a lot of this stuff we'll have to review and determine if it can be eligible or not.
And Michael, to answer your question in the chat, we have received applications from folks who simply wanted us to certify for a period of time, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, as to your point about the recommendations that you do it annually. And we've done that because that was something we learned too. So as long as we are able to certify for a period of time, we will do that.
Okay, because one of the a previous administrator was going over it and said, well, it says here I'm certifying your work for 10 years. And so as it kind of reads, the contract administrator certifies the contractor engaged in public defense work for full-time for 10 years. Because I'm not comfortable signing this because I'm just certifying for 7 years. And so that's why I included that addendum that basically just said that if that's fine, then that's great.
Okay.
And Michael, we also have updated the form on our website to be able to certify time periods as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I would cross-reference the forms just in case. You might have an older one, and we now have an updated one where we took out that little piece of language because
So I have a couple more questions, unless there's more questions from people online. I've been capturing everything in the chat, so we're doing really good on time. So there was a question in here, does OPD supervise municipal courts? How would we certify that work?
Yeah, this is something we got in a question of did a little bit of a different form earlier this week. We are only, as a qualified employer, able to certify work done on behalf of this agency or this body. And so to the extent there's other public service work done, that's going to have to be certified by them.
Perfect. That would follow up with one of the other questions where they worked for other public service like military, public schools, employment. And can those years be combined with this?
And I think they can, from the federal government's perspective, it's just a matter of what we can certify in terms of your application for that federal program.
We may have answered this one earlier when Michael's question. But a question is, should we be waiting to submit our application to OPDC until we have met the 10-year requirement? Or is this something we should be submitting periodically to certify the hours we are actively working, like yearly?
Yeah, this is the piece Heather and I learned about a week ago, which is, and I think Michael put it as, it sounds as though like the federal government is recommending that you do it annually, and that wasn't something we were aware of ahead of time. So, yeah, I mean, if that's the advice they're giving, and we can certify, I think that makes sense rather than waiting.
They have it written in various places in their PSLF form, but I actually talked to a live human being at the Department of Education, and she said, and remember, before we get off the phone, remember to do this every year. It's like most people are waiting, and so I definitely put that at the top of the list. So
Another question is, when determining whether someone has done 30 hours a week on the contract, do we count all 52 weeks or decrease for federal holidays?
Heather, I don't know if you remember the specific guidance on this. I know there was guidance in the federal policy about if you work part-time through the year, and I know there was some specific directives to not count volunteer time or some other type of leave time, but I can't remember how specific they were.
I would have to go back and review
Yeah.
and read the language. I know that we have in our definition to include vacation. Let me pull it up because we had that one slide where it says when determining if a borrower is full-time, an employer must include all hours, including vacation, leave time.
Heather, we lost
Yes.
you. So can you repeat what you said, Heather? Because I didn't hear all of what you said. I'm not sure if everyone else did.
Oh, did I cut out?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll read that again. So in the full-time employment definition, it states when determining if a borrower is full-time, an employer must include all hours, including vacation, leave time, or any leave taken under the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993. And so that's what we have in our definition that's in our policy. But we could go back and review more, when it breaks down to say the 52 weeks. That question.
And I just
Go
want
ahead.
to, that was my question, and I just want to follow up on it, because the problem that we're having is we are a mixed firm. So like if I'm looking at my spreadsheet, like my attorney's hours spreadsheet that I make, I can see their total hours and how many hours spent on the contract and how many hours they spent on retained. but the percentage like of that they work 30 hours a week would change if I was only doing 50 weeks because 2 weeks out of the year are federal holidays. So that's like, it's the math that I'm concerned about, because if I have to certify this for them, I don't want to say, yeah, they did so, because my math is different from your math.
So Eric, should we go back and review?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we need to relook at the federal guidance provided. And I know that there are some materials from other states that are applying this new rule that will probably be helpful as well.
And I think we talked about this one earlier with Dr. McNeil around, you know, the 30 hours, because they're working more than what they bill, right? So I know we talked about that one. And then just another question around vacation impacting the 30 hours. So I think we've got a lot of questions that we may have answered, but again, all the questions that have been placed in the chat, thank you, everyone. And I do have them on a separate document. So we'll have them in a document. We will have them saved in the chat too from our meeting today. So.
Any other questions?
I was wondering if you could just guide me through the OPDC website to find the forms and procedure to apply.
Yeah, I'll show you. Let me pull up the screen real fast and then I will share.
And as Heather's pulling the website up, and Dean, thank you for the question. As you're going through, you know, the documents and you're reading the process and everything that Heather and Eric have worked on, if there is something that may not be clear, or if you find, you know, maybe a website link for some reason that doesn't work, if you can just make sure you send us an email to the policy email address, we can make sure we can either update for clarity, make sure our links are working. Usually we're on top of that, but in case something happens, right, it would be nice to know. Or again, if we're not clear, we want to make sure that we're clear to our end user, which is all of our providers. So.
So if you go to our website, go to provider, and then you go down to policies and procedures. It will take you right into public service loan forgiveness. And if you click on that, here is our, I'll open up each one for you, just so you guys can see what they look like. We have our submission process. So if you're completing your forms, there's instructions, what to fill out, there's reference to policy, and it lets you know what we need and how to submit. And oops, oh, I lost the page. Sorry, folks. We also have a copy of the policy for reference, and then also our form. So this is a fillable form that you could come in, you could download it, it's fillable, and you could just submit that. Let me go back here. Oh, I did it again. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I see it.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm also going to show you all to, so if you come in here, here's the policy team email. So if you do have questions, you can email right to this account. And then also here's our eFax. So, and like I said, just please email the questions, because it's like I said earlier, you know, anytime you develop a new program or a new, for any type of eligibility criteria, there's always those questions that come up, or like, you know, those one-off instances that should need to be reviewed or questioned. So please email those questions, so that way we could go back and we can review and we could determine if there are, other scenarios at work, or do we need to define our policy more? So definitely the feedback and the questions are very much appreciated, especially in the early stages of development. So please, email the questions. Like earlier when I recommended, if you think your application is complete, but you're not sure, go ahead and submit it. So at least we could put it through a review process and be able to make a determination if we need to take a look at it. Are there any other additional questions? We are going to have office hours again tomorrow at noon. So if you do have other questions, you can always come back or just email the policy email address.
Thank you for doing this.
No, thank you. Thank you for your questions. And they definitely help us with, process development and policy development. So definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, I've
thank
been
you so much.
Yeah, I've been dying to get anyone to help me with this process, so I appreciate it quite a bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as we're wrapping up, just so everyone knows, we will post the recording on our website, and then we will add these questions to our frequently asked questions, and we'll make sure they're posted on the website as well.